Have you ever noticed that the more you try to control life, the more it seems to slip through your fingers? It's almost cruel. The search for safety is what makes you feel most unsafe. The mind insists it must understand everything, predict everything, master everything. But the harder it tries, the deeper it sinks into anxiety, overthinking, and exhaustion. The paradox is simple. The desire for control is what destroys your inner peace. We live in an age where every notification is a microdose of stress, and every plan must go exactly right. The culture of total control sells the illusion that happiness comes only when everything is under command. Your body, your time, your destiny. But Stoicism, the ancient wisdom of those who truly understood life, teaches the opposite. Peace doesn't come from control, it comes from acceptance. And that's what most people are too afraid to face. In this video, you'll discover that letting go isn't weakness, it's strength. That surrender isn't the end of power, it's the beginning of freedom. And if you stay until the end, you might realize that what you've been calling chaos was always just life trying to teach you how to flow. Picture a man standing by a river, trying to build a dam with his bare hands. He believes that if he can contain it, he'll finally have peace, safety, control. But the river, like life, doesn't bend to human will. The more he tries to hold it back, the stronger the current grows. That's what happens to the mind that seeks stoicism without understanding. It confuses stability with rigidity, forgetting that true inner peace is born from movement, not stillness. How many people build their own dams every day? They try to control their partner, their time, their future, and end up trapped in the anxiety they created. Overthinking becomes routine, and the search for peace of mind turns into obsession. They fear the unpredictable so much that they lose the beauty of life's natural flow. The ego, disguised as protection, becomes the real enemy, destroying the mindfulness that could set them free. Trying to control too much is like swimming against the current. You burn energy but get nowhere. When the man finally releases the stones and lets the river flow, he discovers the power of surrender. He realizes that letting go isn't giving up, it's trusting. That's where true wisdom begins, understanding that peace doesn't come from stopping the river, but from learning to float with it. And that's where the next step begins, when the mind finally sees the trick it's been playing all along. The mind loves to play the illusionist. It convinces us that by controlling every detail, every word, every step, we'll finally be safe. It's a subtle trap. We mistake control for protection, when in truth it's fear disguised as logic. The ego whispers, if I can dominate everything, nothing will go wrong. But true stoicism teaches the opposite. Real safety comes not from control, but from trust in your own resilience. We are surrounded by notifications, deadlines, comparisons, and social expectations that feed our anxiety. We try to control the unpredictable and call it planning, when often it's just fear of losing what was never ours to begin with. In that state, the mind isn't practicing mindfulness. It's calculating risks, imagining disasters, rehearsing pain. That's the overthinking that steals your peace and turns the present into a battlefield of invisible wars. Epictetus said, "We suffer not from events, but from our opinions about them." And that's where wisdom begins. A calm mind doesn't come from the absence of problems, but from accepting that life is uncertain by nature. Once we accept that, control dissolves, and self-awareness takes its place. That's when we finally see how the need to control has, ironically, been the thing holding us captive all along. There was a woman who believed she had found the perfect formula for happiness. She planned every step, every word, every emotion, until life decided to ignore her script. One small setback, and everything collapsed. Her peace was tied to the plan, not to herself. It was like trying to hold the wind in her hands. The tighter she gripped, the faster it slipped away, taking her inner peace with it. The desire for control is fear dressed up as wisdom. Many call it responsibility, but beneath it hides terror of the unknown. What should bring calm instead creates stress. The person who tries to hold everything together becomes a prisoner of their own anxiety, and what once felt like a shield turns into a cage. At that point, Stoicism stops being a philosophy and becomes a necessity, because learning to live lightly is a matter of mental survival. It's strange how the ego, trying to protect itself, ends up building its own prison. Over-controlling your work, your feelings, or other people leads to the same result: suffocation. The mind loses space for spontaneity, for wisdom, for detachment. True freedom begins when you understand that control doesn't bring safety, it brings imprisonment. And it's exactly at that realization that the real transformation begins, when you learn to surf the waves instead of fearing them. You can't control the waves, but you can learn to surf. That's the essence of Stoicism, and maybe of life itself. When you understand that power lies not in predicting, but in responding, fear starts to fade. The external chaos stops being an enemy and becomes training ground for the mind. That's where real inner peace is born, not from resistance, but from conscious acceptance. Imagine a surfer fighting the ocean, angry at the waves. He drowns from exhaustion, not from lack of skill. Now imagine that same surfer watching, breathing, adapting. He becomes part of the rhythm instead of its victim. Life works the same way. Overthinking and anxiety fade when you realize that response is stronger than control. Mindfulness isn't about eliminating chaos, but about refusing to be ruled by it. Seneca said we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Marcus Aurelius would add, you can retreat into yourself whenever you want. It's in that inner retreat that the ego quiets and wisdom blooms. When the mind learns to respond instead of react, it stops being a slave to the unpredictable and becomes the architect of its own calm. And that's where the next stage begins, the hardest and most liberating one, the art of letting go. There comes a moment when a person realizes they never truly had control, only the illusion of it. It's the moment when life falls apart, and strangely, something inside goes quiet. Letting go isn't giving up, it's trusting the flow. It's seeing that peace isn't about predicting every step, but walking with presence. True Stoicism isn't about hardening, it's about softening the ego until it learns to dance with uncertainty. Most people discover the power of surrender only after losing something: a job, a relationship, a dream that didn't go as planned. Yet what seemed like the end often becomes liberation. When you release control, the mind opens to calm, and anxiety turns into space. That space is where true mindfulness is born, not as a concept, but as an experience. Peace of mind isn't a goal, it's a state of acceptance. The irony is simple: control exhausts you, but acceptance makes you strong. That's the paradox that ends suffering and opens the path to wisdom. Acceptance isn't weakness, it's mastery. Detachment isn't escape, it's trust. And in the silence where the ego stops speaking, wisdom finally begins. If this message resonated with you, take a breath. Let it sink in. And when you're ready, step deeper, subscribe, stay close, and keep walking with me into the Innerverse.